There you go. Good evening, folks. It's been a while since I've done another music theory lesson, and I've been a little bit busy with work, so I apologize for the delay in the music theory lesson videos for those who are actually following the series. Today we will cover a different aspect of music. As you would remember if you watched the first two videos, you will know there's two types. There's the notes or the pitch of music, and then there's rhythm. In this video we're going to cover rhythm. So even if you haven't watched the first two videos, you won't be lost in this video at all. You can start here if you want to, and then watch number 1 and number 2. So with that, let's dive into today's lesson.
There we go. Just double checking that everything is working here on my audio. Cool beans. Looks cool. Alright, so I have prepared the rhythm section on a PowerPoint for you guys, which I hope will bring out the essentials a little bit clearer. So right off the bat, I'm going to start off with the different types of notes that you can get in written music. The first of these will be the whole note. Now if you draw this on a piece of paper, it'll be a round note with a hollow inside. If you have a look over here, you'll see there's nothing inside the note. It's just hollow. There's no tail and there's no flag. Okay, this is also known as a semi-breathe. I think this is the term the British people use for it. But everywhere else that I know of, we use the term a whole note. Okay, now how do we distinguish what this thing is or how it counts? And we call it counts 4 full beats. So if I play this note and I start playing it, it'll be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and release the note. So for the entire duration of this, you will have to keep this note in. Okay. The next note we'll look at is the half note. Now in music note rhythm, or in music rhythm, we half the duration every time. So if a whole note counted 4, you guys can already guess the half note will count half. So just a quick one, this will be a round note with a hollow inside and a tail but no flag. So it's a round note, hollow inside, and it's got a little tail. Okay. It's also known as a minor by our British folk, and it counts 2 full beats. So if I press the note, it'll be 1 and 2 and. Right, next one. That'll be a quarter note, and you'll see the changes now a little bit. This is a round note with a filled inside. So the inside is colored in. It's black. It's not hollow or white anymore. It also has a tail, but it has no flag here. It's also known as a crochet, I think. I'm not sure of the English pronunciation. And it counts 1 full beat. This is almost the stepping stone of all of our music today, is this little guy here, a quarter note. Obviously, it counts 1 full beat, so it would be 1 and. So if you press the note, 1 and release. Okay. Now we're starting to get to the interesting stuff. This is an 8th note. So a round note with a filled inside, a tail, and you'll see it now has this very fancy flag on it as well. Just a side note, if you put 2 8th notes next to one another, the flag doesn't curl down like it does here. It'll actually extend to the next top side of the next 8th note. So it'll just be 2 notes going up and they're connected. Okay. Just again, for the British folk, this is called a quaver. And it counts a half a beat. So it's either 1 release or 1 and release. So half a count. We're going to get to one more before I stop with these different types of notes. And that'll be our 16th note. Okay. This guy is a round note with a tail and 2 flags. Again, if you connect more than one 16th note to one another, we will just connect the flags to one another instead of them dangling down all fancy like they do here. This is also known as a semiquaver, and it counts a quarter of a count. So if we go back a little bit to the quarter note, we know this counts one full count, so one and. Now this guy, the 16th note, there's 4 of them in the same time as it takes a single quarter note to be played. When you're playing music, it becomes a little bit difficult to count this. So the music guys have incorporated I think it's Latin, and they call it taffatifi. So if you had 1 and to have a full count, this will be 1 and. So 1 and if you had to play the different notes. I'm going to clap it out on the table. It's going to be 1 and. Instead of that, if you had an 8th note, it'll be 1 and. And if you had a quarter note, it would just be 1 and release. Okay. Okay, so this is just to explain it a little bit easier. If you had have all of the notes, you now can see them all here as they relate to one another. So just to recap, at the top we've got a whole note and the 2 half notes. So one whole note is also the same as 2 half notes. Okay, this guy counts 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This guy counts only 2 whole counts, right? You remember this? 2 whole beats. So it would be 1 and 2 and. And if we had to continue, it'll be 3 and 4 and. Okay. Then we go down to the quarter note, which counts a full count, right? So it's going to be 1 and 2 and, which is the same as 1 half note, or 3 and 4 and, which is the same as the other half note. And so you can go down. So this would be the 8th note, which we would get then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then this guy, I'm not even, oopsie daisy. This guy I'm not going to count out. I'm going to use the Latin one. It's going to be taffatifi, 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 taffatifi. Okay, I'm going to pause it here just to make my editing a little bit easier. Right, okay, so we're back here. This is a very, very nice little table where you can see how they relate and what they count. So if you want to, you can pause the video here, take a screenshot of this, and hopefully that will help you a little bit in the future. Okay, just a quick one again. Whole note, 4 beats, half note, 2 beats, quarter note, 1 beat, 8th note, half a beat, 16th note, and a quarter of a beat. And then if you combine them, so if you combine 2 8th notes, you get 2 half a beats, which means it's 1 beat. It's the same as 1 quarter note. Okay. And similarly, if you have 4 16th notes, you also get 1 beat, which is also the same as a single quarter note. Okay. Now, the very important part when writing music is time signatures, and this gives you the idea of what the rhythm is going to be like in the rest of the piece of music. So it is always placed just after the clef, and I'll show you that in just a second. And it inherently influences the feeling of the song. So if you think of different types of music, you can think of your normal rock or shuffle blues. That'll typically be a 4-beat piece of music, where if you think of a waltz, and for any of those who have done the waltz or listened a little bit more attentively to a waltz, you know it'll count in 3, so it's going to be 1 2 3 1 2 3. Okay, and then to explain this to you a little bit further, I'm going to go into the 2 basics of rhythm, which is called the measure and the beat. So a measure is a timed grouping of notes within a piece of music. Now, how do I do this? This is exactly what I tried to explain earlier with the waltz and rock. where a waltz will have 3 beats in a measure. You count it in groups of 3, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if I had to split that up into measures, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, split, next measure, 1, 2, 3. And the beat would be each of those little claps within the measure. So there would be 3 beats within a waltz. I hope that makes sense. In written music, an end of a measure is indicated as a vertical bar line. And this is done as it very, very much eases the reading of music. And it also helps you to play around with the accents and dynamics within music, which we will get to a little bit later. The other very cool thing about grouping up a piece of music into several measures is you can pinpoint a specific part in written music to someone. So if you're playing with a bunch of people and you practicing and you say, oh, okay, we messed up or we need to practice this specific part again, you can say, okay, let's start up at measure 22 and we play up to measure 36. These are usually numbered in the music as well. So that is a very I can almost say an addressing method within music. Okay. Just a sip of tea. Right. Okay. So time signatures. What is it? How is it? How does it work? And where do we find it? And how do we read it? So a time signature is 2 numbers always behind the clef. Okay. This is something that I did explain in the first and second video, and this is called the G clef. For those who didn't watch it, I suggest you do quickly go back and watch video 1 and 2. But the time signature is right after the clef, and you'll see it always consists of 2 numbers, top and a bottom number. And what do these numbers mean? So I put it in here in two questions, which makes it very easy to follow. The top number tells you how many, and the bottom tells you of what. So how many of what type of musics per measure. So in this case, we've got 4. How many? 4 of them. Of what? 4 quarter notes. And then you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter notes and a vertical bar line to tell you this is the end of a measure. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter notes and the end of a measure. Now in this specific example, there is only quarter notes. You can obviously have several selections of notes here, as long as the total notes in this measure adds up to the equivalent of 4 quarter notes. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Please leave some questions or comments down the video if you have any. I would try my best to get to them and answer. Just another one. There are 3 groups of time signatures, and I'm not going to explain the difficult ones now. We're just going to go with the simple time groups. Whoops. But there is simple time, which has even groups of notes. Now this is going to sound slightly weird, but this is even groups of notes per beat. Now I know one note is not an even group, so it doesn't entirely make sense, but when we get to compound time, I'm just going to briefly explain it so that you guys understand it. In compound time, you would get 3 notes per beat, so there will be 1, 2, 3, and that would form your first beat. And then again 1, 2, 3, and that will form your second beat. 1, 2, 3, that'll form your third beat, and 1, 2, 3 would form your fourth beat. Now these guys I'm not going to look at now because they're quite difficult to read in the beginning as they work with triplets effectively. And then the other type of times that I'm not even going to touch is irregular time, and that is times like 5/8 or 7/8. What this means, if we quickly look at the rule again, how many of what? How many 5 of what? 8th notes. So 5/8 notes per measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes will be per measure. And that makes it incredibly difficult to play, as you've got a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 type vibe going on per measure. And the same with 7, where it's it's grouped up in 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 per measure. It's got this very offbeat, odd style of music, and it's not very common either. Okay, so let's quickly run through the 3 basic time that you will encounter when learning to play the piano. So the majority of music today will be in 4/4 time. And if we quickly do the rule again of what we said, how we calculate this or how this works, the top number, which is a 4, how many beats? 4 of what? Quarter notes. So per bar there are 4 quarter notes. So if we now have this piece of music, how do we play it? Okay, firstly, you're going to have to use your little rhymes to get the note name. And then secondly, we're going to do the timing. So if we refer back to our little table, this is called a quarter note, which counts 1 full count. So it's going to be 1 and so forth. And we've got quite a few of them. In this case, all quarter notes. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and let's start. It's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then to the second measure again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, I hope that makes sense. The next one, 3/4 time, which is our waltzes, Bleu de Nuit, and one that people don't always recognize as Happy Birthday to You is also a waltz. Again, the 2 questions, how many? The top number, 3, so there's 3 beats and 3 of what? It'll be quarter notes, the little 4 in the bottom number. Again, a quarter note counts 1 and, a full count. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and going to this next measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay. One thing I didn't measure that I only see now is if we quickly go back to the 4/4 time, there are 4 beats per measure, right? So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Very important when you play music, you have to articulate correctly. And that means that there is a strong note and or accents throughout the beat within a measure. That was a mouthful. So what do I mean by that? It means that the first note, the first beat of every measure will be a strong accent. The second note will be a weak accent. Third note will also be strong, but not as strong as the first one, so it'll be medium. And then the fourth one, or the fourth beat, will be weak again. So how do we play that? It'll be something like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I hope you could hear in the claps articulation that the first and third beat on each measure was a little bit louder. On waltz, it's even easier. It is just this first beat that is a bit stronger than the other 2. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then let's quickly go to the last one that we're going to look at tonight. And that'll be the 2/2 time. So the 2 questions that we have to ask. The top number tells us how many. We've got 2. And the bottom number tells us what? How many. Now, in this case, you'll see there's a very weird little sign here. This is musician shorthand for 2/2 time, okay? But they could also have just written this as a 2 and a 2. So how does this work? It's got 2 half notes. How long does a half note count? 1 and 2 and. 2 full counts, right? So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay. That is how you would count it. But if you play the music and there's not a lot of short notes such as 8th notes or 16th notes, you could also shorten the counting to ease it up for yourself and count 1 and 2 and, which means you will count double effectively. Not often used, but I did put it in just for in case. Again, just note that the first beat will be a strong accented beat and the second beat will be a weak one. Right, let's quickly have a look at one or two exercises for you all to practice this on. So, this is our first exercise, and the first thing we need to ask, this is wrong, this is wrong. Okay, so the first question, top, how many beats? In this case, it's 4. It's not 2, that is wrong. And of what? Quarter notes. Okay, again, this is wrong. I copy pasted a slide, and I'll try to fix that in the next video. So 4, 4. Okay, 4 quarter notes, and that will bring us to the measure every time. So if we look at the first note, so okay, hang on, one step at a time. So per measure, we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Then it's going to stop, and we're going to go to the next measure, where we're again going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So let's quickly have a look here. The first note here we've got is a half note, which, can you guys remember, will count 2 full counts. So 1 and 2 and, right? The next one we've got here is an 8th note and another 8th note. Can you see what I mean? When they are 2 next to one another, the flag gets added at the top. So in this case, it'll be a quarter note, 8th note, which counts half a count. So this is going to be, if we quickly recap again, 1 and 2 and. This is going to be 3 and. And then this guy, you guys should know it by now, it's a quarter note which counts a full count. So it would be 4 and. So if we had to clap this measure out, it'll be 1, oh, let's just do this. There we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We can quickly do that one more time. It's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The next measure, we've got a quarter note, which counts 1 full count. So 1 and. 2 8th notes, so it's going to be 2 and. Another quarter note, which is a full count, 3 and another quarter note, which is also a full count, 4 and you'll notice we've got the bar again. So in this case, it'll be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And if you quickly cheat a little bit and you glance over to the next one, you'll see it's the exact same representation of notes. So again, we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if we quickly clap this together all the way from the start, so right at the beginning here, I'm going to count us in with 1 bar. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's start 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And hopefully by the end of this, you now can do the second exercise by yourself. I'll quickly run through it with you guys though. So just a quick one. How many? 3 of what? Quarter notes. So we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and per bar. We've got a quarter note, an 8th note, sorry, not a quarter note, 8th note, 8th note, 8th note, 8th note, which is half a count every time. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and. This is a quarter note, full count, 3 and. Quarter note, full count, 1 and. Quarter note, full count, 2 and. Quarter note, full count, 3 and. What is this? This is a half a note. It's 2 full counts, so 1 and 2 and. 2 8th notes, so half a count, 3 and. So if we clap this out all the way from the beginning, we're going to have 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. And that is it. I'm going to add some exercises in the video link at the bottom in the description of the video, which you guys can go and you guys can practice this rhythm section online with some exercises. As always, leave a like and please leave some comments to tell me whether or not you understand or whether or not I am totally confusing you guys, and I'll try to clarify it. Have a lovely day.